America is the wealthiest and most powerful nation in history. But its rise to the top was actually quite surprising. In fact, most of North America was overlooked for over a century after it was first discovered. Here's a map made just before Christopher Columbus stumbled upon America. The Vikings claimed they had found an island somewhere out there, but nobody realized it was actually an entire continent. Columbus believed he could reach Asia by heading west, but instead he landed on some islands in the Caribbean. Columbus didn't find the spices he was after, but he still thought he was somewhere near India. So he called the native people Indians, grabbed some valuables, and brought them back to the King and Queen of Spain. "Your Majesties, I've just returned from Asia." "Wonderful. Where are the spices?" "Well, we haven't located the spices just yet, but they have enormous amounts of gold. Now we're interested." "Columbus, go back, tell them to convert to Christianity, and bring us that gold." A few years before Columbus claimed the West Indies for Spain, the Portuguese had figured out they could reach Asia by sailing around Africa. So Spain and Portugal drew a line straight down the middle of the map, agreeing that all non-Christian lands on one side would belong to Portugal, and everything on the other side would go to Spain. The Portuguese sailed off to Asia and built a massive trading empire, while the Spanish got to work conquering their half of the world. All the interesting parts of the Americas were down south, where there was plenty of gold, silver, and people. So that's exactly where the Spanish headed. The Spanish did send an expedition into North America in 1539, but they found no gold or silver, so they largely dismissed all these seemingly worthless lands up north. The English had actually sent an explorer to North America, while the Spanish were still poking around the Caribbean islands. That was 16 years before the Spanish even discovered Florida. But after that, the English waited nearly a century before attempting to colonize America. England's first colony was set up at Roanoke, North Carolina, in 1585. But that very same year England got pulled into a war with Spain, and that colony vanished without a trace. They tried again at Jamestown, and this time it stuck. Then the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, strict Christians who banned things like gambling and even celebrating Christmas. Soon people were flooding into America, and before long the entire East Coast was dotted with British colonies. Meanwhile, the French were busy claiming all the land through the middle of North America. Now it's 1754, and it's time for a war to settle who actually owns what in America. New France has a population of around 60,000, so they team up with some native tribes, which is why it's called the French and Indian War. The British colonies have over 1 million people and also bring native allies to their side. Who do you think won? That's right, the British defeated the French. At the same time, a major war was also raging back in Europe, and when it was all over, it was time to redraw the map. France handed half of Louisiana to Spain before the war ended to keep it out of British hands. Then after the war, France had to give Britain the other half of Louisiana, along with Canada. Britain now controlled enormous stretches of America, but had also burned through enormous amounts of money fighting the war. Hey colonies, you know that costly war we helped you win? Yeah, thanks for that. Sure, no problem. By the way, we'll be collecting a lot of taxes now to cover all the help we provide you. What? You never help us. We're the ones always helping you. And how can you tax us when we have no vote? The colonists were furious about the new taxes. The disagreement turned into a confrontation, and the confrontation turned into a revolution. On the 4th of July 1776, Americans declared their independence from Great Britain, and that was the birth of the United States of America. Right? Not quite. It would take 5 more years before the Americans actually won their independence, and once they had their freedom, a new problem emerged. The government they'd built was a total disaster. The 13 colonies had basically become 13 separate countries, united in name only. The new nation was failing, and failing fast. So the Founding Fathers drafted a new constitution and built an entirely new federal government that actually functioned. The new constitution became official once 9 states had ratified it, and in 1789, George Washington was elected the first president of the United States. But the USA was only this big, and all the land over here still belonged to Spain. So how did America acquire more territory? Well, over in France, a man named Napoleon seized power and began conquering Europe. Napoleon also had dreams of an empire in America, so he struck a deal with Spain to get Louisiana back. But the Americans depended on the Mississippi River to move goods in and out, and they were nervous about what Napoleon might do if he controlled it. So, America asked France to sell them New Orleans. You know my plans for a grand empire in North America. But now I must invade Britain. We can build our American empire after we defeat the British. But if the Americans find out about our plans, they'll side with Britain, which could be fatal for us. If we sell Louisiana to the Americans, they'll be our allies forever, and Britain will be ours. It would be foolish to give away our largest territory. The Americans only want New Orleans. Enough. My mind is made up. We sell it all. The money will fund our war with Britain, and so America purchased Louisiana for $15 million, instantly doubling in size, which was fortunate, because America's population was nearly doubling every 20 years. The average American family had 7 children in those days, and all those kids needed somewhere to live, so vast numbers of Americans pushed westward into wide open, seemingly unclaimed land. Does anyone own this land?
Of course not.
Great, because it's mine now. But these are my hunting grounds. That's not proper English. You're supposed to say were my hunting grounds. In 1819, America bought Florida from Spain and agreed that a certain line would mark the boundary between the United States and New Spain. Just 2 years later, Mexico broke free from Spain, and America had a new neighbor. Mexico's northern territories were thinly populated and hard to govern, so the Mexican government invited Americans to settle in Texas. These settlers quickly outnumbered the Mexicans, and before long the Texans broke away from Mexico and formed their own republic.
Yeehaw! We want to join the USA! Do you have slaves?
Yes, and we're proud of it. Sorry, we don't need any more slave states. Hey guys, I'm president now, and this is ours. In 1845, the United States reversed course and allowed the Republic of Texas to join the Union. Border disputes with Mexico led to war, and at the war's end, the United States paid Mexico $15 million and took the northern Mexican territories that President Polk had wanted. 5 years later, the U.S. also purchased another piece of Mexican land for $10 million. Meanwhile, Britain agreed to hand the Americans all of the Oregon Territory below a certain line, keeping everything above it for themselves. In just 50 years, through great fortune and one messy war with Mexico, America stretched from coast to coast. Now there was no more room to grow.
Unless, hello, Uncle Sam!
I found an island in the middle of the ocean. Can I claim it for the U.S.? We might need that for World War II. Does anyone live there? No, sir. Is it covered in bird droppings? Yes, sir. Congratulations, son. You're standing on U.S. soil. I wouldn't exactly call this soil, sir. By the way, the Guano Islands Act is still on the books. So if you're fed up paying too much for rent, go find yourself an island to occupy. Everything seemed to be going great. After Americans reached California, word spread about a gold discovery and masses of people rushed in to dig it up. Up in Oregon there was plenty of free farmland. America was prospering, with peace on all sides. But there was a serious problem festering on the inside: slavery. In northern states it was illegal, and many saw it as a profound evil that had to be ended. In the South, slavery was deeply embedded in the economy. Americans had been fighting over the issue for decades, but things reached a breaking point when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Many Southerners believed Lincoln would abolish slavery, so most of the slave states broke away from the United States and formed their own nation. That triggered a devastating civil war. Countless lives were lost. The North prevailed. The enslaved were freed, and the United States was whole again. I'm sorry to hear about the assassination of President Lincoln.
Yes.
Another assassin tried to kill me the same night, but I survived the stabbing. That's terrible. I mean, terrible that you were stabbed, but I'm glad you made it. Anyway, the Tsar wants America to have Alaska. How much can you offer? I think we could do $5 million, maybe 5.5 million, but not a cent more. How about 7 million? Sure. Great, I have approval for 700 million. We can sign the treaty tomorrow. Could we do it tonight? I should have asked for more money. And just like that, America had another enormous chunk of land. Now it just needed a few tropical islands. Look at that. Some American businessmen had seized control of the Hawaiian Islands and were asking the United States to annex them. But the president refused, believing that America must be an honorable, law-abiding nation that never uses its power to take advantage of weaker peoples. Others, however, worried that if America didn't step in, another great power, like Germany or Japan, might swoop in, take the islands, and use them as a base to strike America in some future war. Should America mind its own business, or mind its own interests? America's tradition of staying out of other nations' affairs was about to be tested, because something was brewing in Cuba. And it wasn't coffee. Cuba was in the middle of a war for independence. Nearly all of Spain's other colonies had already broken free after the American and French revolutions. But Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines were still under Spanish rule. The Cuban independence struggle was constant front page news in America, and most Americans sympathized with the revolutionaries. In 1898, after an American warship sank in a mysterious explosion, the U.S. gave Spain an ultimatum: leave Cuba or else. Spain responded by declaring war on the United States. The U.S. then swiftly captured Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, effectively ending what remained of the Spanish Empire that Columbus had originally built. During the Spanish-American War, the U.S. also annexed Hawaii, which was becoming a vital naval hub. After the war, the president was assassinated, and the young, vigorous Theodore Roosevelt unexpectedly stepped into the role. "Hey, Columbia, we'd like to build a canal right here." "Sure, just pay us 10 million, deal." "Actually, we changed our mind. No canal."
But we had an agreement.
"Sorry. Hey, Panama, welcome to the Club of Nations. We'd like to build a canal right here." "Go right ahead." While Roosevelt was president, he built up the second largest navy in the world and used that naval muscle to shape global politics. The Americans completed the Panama Canal in 1914, allowing the powerful U.S. Navy to shift rapidly between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. America had become a world power, and World War I had just begun.